Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Curot Writer, and this week we're going to be taking a look back at the 1991 Western comedy film titled City Slickers. Now, City Slickers runs for 1 hour and 52 minutes long. It is directed by Ron Underwood. It is produced by Irby Smith. The script was written by Lowell Gans and Babalu Mandel. Okay, the score was done by Mark Scheiman. The cinematography was done by Dean Semler, and the editing was done by O. Nicholas Brown. And the stars of this movie are Billy Crystal, Daniel Stern, Bruno Kirby, Patricia Wettig. We also have Jack Palance, who actually went on to win an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Yep, he's in there too. We have Noble Willingham. We have Tracy Walter, Jeffrey Tambor, Josh Mostel.
Hello, Mother.
Hello, Mother. Yes, we also have David Paymer. We also got the voice of Lisa Simpson. She's in there too. Her name is Yardley Smith. And then finally, we also have a very, very young, pre-famed Jake Gyllenhaal. Yes, that's right, Jake Gyllenhaal in his youth, when he was probably about maybe 12 years old at the time when this movie was released. So there's a little bit of a trivia. I think this was actually Jake Gyllenhaal's debut. And I think he also actually turned in a pretty good performance, by the way. Okay. Even if his role was just, like the typical kid in the movie. Okay, so this is actually kind of an address out to all you middle-agers out there, who are roughly around my age. Yes, that's right, FYI, I am a 42-year-old man. So, by the time you reach your 40s, you start to have this belief that your days of fun and celebration could be winding down and fast. Yes, your best days. I mean, when you're in your 20s and when you're in your 30s, you had this belief, this energy, this desire and passion to want to go out and set yourself for an adventure. So then by the time you reach your 40s, you sometimes often wonder, how much more fun and excitement do we have left? We're in our 40s. We're not going to have this energy, this adventure like we did when we were in our 20s and 30s, when we were a little more loose, when being an adult was the best years of our life. By the time you reach your 40s, you realize that it's winding down and fast. And a lot of people sometimes often get stuck in that rut. Yes, for middle-aged men, and maybe even for women for the sense, in some cases, but since this movie is basically geared towards the middle-aged man, City Slickers is not, necessarily about lacing up your saddles and dressing in cowboy duds and have the adventure out in the Wild West. That is the misconception. This movie is really about getting to enjoy as much about life while you can before it's too late. So even though it may have a cynical approach that middle-aged people are through with having fun according to the characters, City Slickers actually contradicts that approach by saying that happiness begins at 40 and it doesn't just stop there. It also features an engaging performance by the underrated Jack Palance, who also got his long overdue Oscar award for Best Supporting Actor for playing the character of Curly Washburn. So the story goes a little something like this. Okay, we have Mitch Robbins, played by Billy Crystal. He has hit that dreadful age of despair, 39. He has caught himself stuck in a rut. He feels that he has not really fulfilled everything that he's accomplished or what he wanted to accomplish. He has a menial job. He works at a radio station, but he isn't like an on-air announcer or an on-air personality. No, he has a pretty menial, boring job of just selling advertisements. That's really what his job is. Nothing exciting, nothing really that spectacular. He's not an on-air personality. He's just an advertisement sales rep. That's pretty much what his job is. Sure, he lives in a nice home. He's got a nice wife. He's got 2 kids, which includes a very young Jake Gyllenhaal. But he still feels that his life has not been fully fulfilled. And he feels that, he's 39. Next year he's going to be 40. And maybe he just feels that he hasn't done enough. He's stuck in a midlife crisis. He fears that there is more he could have done in life and fears that he will never get that chance because of his advanced age. But he's definitely not alone in this age of disparity. We have Phil Burnquist, played by Daniel Stern, who works at a grocery store. He is, I think, something like an assistant manager, I think. And while he's been stuck in kind of a loveless relationship, he doesn't seem to get along with his father-in-law, who is his co-worker. And he's got himself stuck in a middle-aged rut. And then we also have Ed Ferrullo, played by Bruno Kirby. Is it just me, or does Bruno Kirby sound exactly like Joe Pesci? I mean, their voices are just almost so similar. It's staggering. I mean, they have this gravelly, high-pitched voice, both Bruno Kirby and Joe Pesci. And I almost thought that this was Joe Pesci at first, but no, it's not him. Anyway, they also are both feeling the pinch as well. Ed Ferrullo, his newly wedded wife wants to have children, but he just does not know about the responsibilities of raising a kid. And, he's also facing kind of like a level of insecurity as well. They all are sort of feeling the pinch of a midlife crisis. So the trifecta embark on a 2-week sabbatical to redeem themselves by saddling up their horses and riding off in the Old West from New Mexico to Colorado to lead sheep to a pasture. They're going to go on this long cattle up, I guess. I don't know how you pronounce it. A long Wild West adventure to gather up cattle and to haul them from New Mexico to Colorado. And they're not alone in this. There's other city folk that are also doing this as well. But of course, the main focuses are on Mitch, Phil, and Ed. They are led by an experienced cowboy named Curly, played by Jack Palance, who shows them how it's done and gives them a life's lessons about the meaning of life while driving cattle to the open country. So even though the story is definitely rich in character and performance, the plot might probably be a little bit weak and predictable. I mean, I'm sure there could have been many ways they could have elaborated a little bit more on the plot, but it's just a little bit way too simplified, a little bit too sugar-coated, a bit spoon-fed. And the outcome, of course, turns out to be predictable. We know that the triad will learn that midlife isn't the be-all to end-all in the cycle of life. The real fun underlies within the interaction between the city folk and the country folk, and though it might be a bit stereotyped from both party members, Curly's lessons about life lingers the whole way through. And I think it's been done very, very effectively. Sure, of course, you have the stereotypical city folks who pretty much are just a bunch of bumbling twats who don't seem to know what they're doing. And then, of course, as the weeks go on, they just keep getting better and better. Some people never really, in reality is that not everybody, like, ever really learns, like, within a matter of days. It might take them weeks, it might take them months, or it may not even take them at all. But as always, they seem to just get better within days, when it probably takes a whole lifetime of experience to know about hauling cattle and about saddling up. So that's where the weakness is. Yes, it's too predictable and it's too sugar-coated in its ways of explaining things. I'm not saying that it actually insults the intelligence and that the real foundations of this movie that carries its way through is the lessons in life that Jack Palance's character Curly explains. That's probably like maybe the only thing that really makes this movie the way it is. The juxtapose of witty comical banter and slapstick moments is what carries its film to its 1 hour and 52-minute duration. The laughter is always there. It's always a great comedy movie, and definitely holds up like a stampede can be caused due to the sound of a coffee grinder or the cynical gripes from Billy Crystal's Mitch. And sure, the set pieces are there for a surreal, goofy film that lampoons the Western genre. It all seems to be in place like it was intended to be. Sure, this movie does have its slapstick moments. It sure definitely has its wittiness in terms of comedy banter. And yes, all the set pieces are just right there, but that's where the weakness is, because it's just all too obvious. It all seems to be in place like it was intended to be. What I mean by that is you turn on a coffee grinder and it causes a negative backlash. Sometimes there was one graphic scene where a slight little provocation and a few cattle fall off a cliff. Okay, you don't actually watch the cattle fall off a cliff, but it's just so obvious that it can be a little bit painful to not only watch but to think about. I mean, I mean, the reaction. I mean, if I saw that happen, I would probably be traumatized. Fortunately, the camera doesn't focus on the cattle falling off a cliff, but you do see them go off a cliff, but not actually watching them as they go off a cliff. I mean, you don't see their blood splattering or anything like that. It's not graphic, but it is disturbing and it is intense. But it seems like it was right there from the moment, and it was set up that way. This may be due to the trio's realization that they definitely had a good thing coming for them all along, and that they are novice ranchers and are not cut out to hold this job. It never feels one-sided and gives equal balance between the witty banter and the slapstick quality this movie has, making it feel more organic and less forced. So I will have to admit, yes, the comedy factor is really there. And I like that, the slapstick moments are not over the top. It's not cartoony-like in some ways. I mean, just because, Daniel Stern is there and you may remember him from Home Alone, don't worry. You're not going to see anybody getting their head smashed with an iron or getting electrocuted and then walking like, it was nothing really. No, we don't have any of that. We have the comical moments. We have the cynical humor. And we have the deep-rooted philosophy there the whole time. So it ensures us that we're watching a comedy, but it's not like completely dumbing us down. When it comes to who utilizes their acting chops at best, Billy Crystal was definitely perfectly cast as the lead role by using a cynical wit to his best capacity while succeeding in a deadpan delivery. Daniel Stern and Bruno Kirby are great as the unlucky Phil and the philandering Ed, respectively. The trio offer their own blend of humor as they work off their humor upon each other as they each stand out on their own. The camera work definitely is splendid for each other. The chemistry is like right there between the three performers, and the jokes and the humor make the pacing of this film flow so much easily. As the smoke clears, the mass will truly say that the scene-stealing performance in Jack Palance is the scene stealer as Curly. But while his menacing smile and his frontier knowledge, this has been a role that he has played a lot over the course of his 60-year acting career. He has been in many, many westerns, often cast as a villain. Here, he's not particularly being cast as a villain per se. He is kind of more portrayed closer to being as a tough rancher. Of course, he still has that intimidating factor, though he's not playing a villain here. He's more or less being a rancher with a much deep-rooted philosophy in life. And this is not to undermine him in any way. Some of the more funnier scenes are when he's yakking it up with Billy Crystal. It's a bit questionable if Jack Palance actually deserved the Oscar in his role, due to the fact that he was definitely Oscar-worthy in a lot of other performances. Shine, actually, and Sudden Fear come to mind. I think he also did a very effective acting performance as the villain character in the movie, the first Young Guns movie.
Are you ready?
He has performed in quite a lot of movies in the past. More so deservedly for an Oscar than in this one. And I think it's just due to his very limited screen time in this movie. Nonetheless, his character of Curly was fun to watch, but I think that there were definitely more better qualified actors in the position for Best Supporting Actor that year. I think it was just because of his screen time was about maybe 10-15 minutes long, which seems more closer to being just a bona fide cameo or a very small role. To be a supporting character, you still need to have just as much equal airtime as the lead. Maybe not as much, you don't have to be in every scene as the lead, but you do have to be in for more substantial period of time in a movie to stand out as a supporting character. His screen time was about maybe 10-15 minutes long, and that's about it. I mean, it was effective, but it just wasn't fulfilled. To say that the film was dated would be a cliche on my part. But why lie about it? Sure, yes, this movie is dated. I mean, but it's obvious. I mean, this movie came out in 1991, so 1991 is definitely a far cry from the things that we have today. I mean, the clothes, the style, and the trends are permanently locked in the early 1990s. Also, the humor is a lot more lighter in tone, even though there is some swearing, but it's definitely handled with precaution. I mean, this movie is a comedy, but it's not like a chronic fuckfest where everybody is saying a whole bunch of cute little four-letter words. It's not a swear-a-thon. The delivery definitely has a sweeter tone, but tamer than compared to most comedy-themed films that you get today. In a nutshell, City Slickers manages to successfully convey a great lesson in life, and by adding the humorous take on it. That way, it wouldn't go off as being preachy or self-serving. It's not the most original script, and it does feel 1990s stamped, but with the comedic performances of Billy Crystal, Daniel Stern, and Bruno Kirby, along with the enjoyable performance by Jack Palance, this movie truly is a winner. So, in spite of the few flaws there, I know I kind of did a little bit of a rant, but it wasn't like an over-the-top rant. It wasn't anything deterring in any kind of way, shape, or form. I thought the movie was really well executed. It did get its message across. It did talk about some philosophical statements about the meaning of life and how you can't really necessarily take it for granted. And that just because you guys out there are in your 40s doesn't necessarily mean that the fun stops here. 40-year-olds can still enjoy life and still can have fun. And even though, yes, work and commitment and stuff like that is always very important, still, we could still enjoy life. We could still have fun with ourselves. And it doesn't have to be the be-all to end-all. So as long as you're still living on this earth, as long as you can still manage to have fun while you can, I'd say take this advantage, because you'll probably never get another chance. And I think this is just something that we should all sort of look into once we hit that age. So with all that said and done, if I was to give this movie a scale out of 10, I would give City Slickers an 8. I highly recommend you guys to watch this movie. It's definitely still 10 times better than their sequel, The Legend of Curly's Gold. But it's still a great watch, and yeah, we'll end it from there. So I guess this ends my rider review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember, there's 3 simple rules. Be kind, be courteous, and don't be rude. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Rider saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.